Today we're going to be playing Mickey's Ultimate Challenge for Sega Genesis. Spoiler alert, Mickey never wears this costume at any point in the game. Let's pop the game in, play the game, and game. We should probably plug this in first, then we'll play, or something. I don't know. Cut.
Released in 1994 for the Sega Genesis and various other home video game and handheld formats of the time by High-Tech Expressions, and developed by Designer Software, the first ever video game developed by a group of people who'd go on to produce a number of favorites under their current moniker Way Forward, Mickey's Ultimate Challenge tells the story of either Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse falling asleep while reading a fairy tale. Before they know it, they find themselves dropped onto a magical castle setting that has been threatened by constant earthquakes. Thus, it's up to you to help Mickey and Minnie find out who or what is responsible for the evil tremors before nothing of note happens. Yeah, that sums up the plot rather nicely, I think. Upon starting a new game, you could choose to play as either Mickey or Minnie. There's no real difference between the two beyond different dialogue and slightly different animation for the two characters. You can also choose your level of difficulty, which alters aspects of the game. Now, at first glance, Mickey's Ultimate Challenge might seem like a rather ho-hum side-scrolling platform game, and it's not surprising to get that perception at first glance, but this castle setting is merely a hub world for the individual dilemmas you'll have to contend with, for you see, Mickey's Ultimate Challenge is not necessarily a full-blown video game per se, but rather a compilation of 6 different mini-games that you'll have to complete in order to win the overall game. So let's touch on these wonderful bits one by one, shall we? Game number 1. The librarian needs his books reassembled a certain way and you have to hop on the correct books to solve this dilemma. Depending on the difficulty setting, you'll either have to spell out a word with the proper letters, or collect the letters in the proper alphabetical order. This is the closest thing to challenging platforming you will find in Mickey's Ultimate Challenge, as one fall into the bottomless pit will cause you to restart the whole process from scratch. Fortunately, that's the worst fate you could suffer in a game like this. Once you get all the letters in the proper order, or whatever the case may be, you win. Game number 2. Donald Duck is a sorcerer who has accidentally shrunk you down to size. He could change you back to your regular size, but he needs the appropriate potions to put together the growth spell required to reverse his effects. So you have to move around the board and push all the potion flasks into this mirror thing. In other words, this is a variation of that Sokoban game where you push boxes into the designated areas, except much simpler because this whole cartridge was designed for little kids and people who don't like Sokoban all that much. The higher the difficulty setting, the more boards you have to play through, but even then it's more drawn out than actually challenging. Game number 3. Huey, Dewey, and Louie can't bring down the drawbridge because the pipes are clogged or something. So you have to press these 4 buttons in the proper sequence in order to unclog the pipes. You remember that game Simon, that thing with the glowing buttons that you have to press in sequence? Yeah, this is Simon in Disney form with 4 varieties of fart noises. The end. Again, the higher difficulty settings gives you more rounds to play, but it's still Simon with fart noises, so have fun. Game number 4. Daisy is distressed because all her portraits are covered in dust, so you have to clean them off before the torchlight runs out. This is your basic tile matching puzzle game, and so long as you have time remaining as determined by the amount of light left in the room, you could try as many times as you want to try and get all the pictures revealed. Difficulty determines the length of the playfield and thus the number of portraits on the board. And because there's a few unique mugshots, there are plenty of repeating portraits you could pair up, which makes life somewhat easier, especially on the longer boards.
Checkpoint!
Game number 5. While he's waiting for some medals, Goofy has a bunch of tools in his toolbox and he's gonna make you guess what's inside that toolbox. This is essentially that codebreaker game where you have to guess the correct code and you're given hints on how accurate you are. The easier settings will actually point out which parts of the code are correct, while higher settings will only give you vague hints. Not much to this one, it's pretty straightforward, it's much like any other codebreaker game you've played. Or not. As you complete each puzzle, you'll earn an item. These items are given to those who need them. For example, Daisy needs her shoes, Donald needs his spell book, that sort of thing. Giving the items to their rightful owners will earn you magic beans, which you then toss into this well where a big old beanstalk will grow and will reveal the source of the tremors. Sorry if I spoiled the ending for you. Which leads us to our 6th and final game, Game number 6. The sliding puzzle. The higher the difficulty, the more divided up the puzzle is sliced into. And since I've never had the patience for sliding puzzles, I'll just have to assume that you complete the puzzle, the mice wake up the giant, explain that his snores are causing earthquake to the people below, and then the big show shows up and wrestles the giant in a makeshift ring in the sky that breaks and causes the two monsters to land in the castle, killing everyone below. And then Worf shows up and says he's not a merry man or something. I don't know. I don't like sliding puzzles. So, yeah. Okay, so Mickey's Ultimate Challenge might not be this amazing platformer or grand epic that such a name would imply. It's just a collection of minigames that serves more to entertain the younger crowd than provide any sort of challenge to the veteran video game player. While there are challenges here, there's virtually no risk involved, as a failed attempt merely means trying again the next time. The game ends when you've completed all the challenges, or you just turn off the game, whichever comes first. And while these games are simplistic in nature and might not hold interest in the long term, the one thing you cannot say about these games is that they're badly made, because they're not. These are simple, straightforward games that function as expected. You're given clear instructions on what to do. It doesn't take long to figure out the simple controls for each game, which work as well as you would expect. And while this is clearly a game for the younger set, you could play this on the highest difficulty and get some mild amusement out of it depending on your attitude towards games of this ilk. I was enjoying the brief moments I had playing this game, even got to go for a swim from one side of the castle to the next, which served no purpose whatsoever, but hey, it's a nice little touch nonetheless. Mickey's Ultimate Challenge looks fairly decent, looking almost like a Disney cartoon thing come to life. Not quite as imaginative as past Disney games gracing the Genesis or even the Super Nintendo or whatever, but the visuals are pretty polished stuff nonetheless. All the characters are easily recognizable, there's quite a bit of color and vibrancy for a system that's lacking in the colors. This visual of Donald Duck looking through the glass table is unsettling and needs to burn. The sleeping giant looks somewhat friendly and, well, sleepy, and as for Mickey and Minnie, they're well drawn and animate well enough with unique postures and things of that nature. Can't fault the visuals here, they're nice looking and they fit the overall aesthetics quite nicely, I think. However, one area where Mickey's Ultimate Challenge does falter is in the sound department. To make a long story short, there are a few sound effects in the game, and they are not the most pleasant sounding, going over about as well as a fart in church. Man, I'm not even sorry for that. The same case can be said for the music, which sounds pretty weak, all things considered. Yeah, there's a handful of tracks in the game, and they probably sound better on other formats, but I'm going by what's here, and what's here is not that great, and that's pretty much all I got. So, generally weak sauce as far as the sound goes. Overall, Mickey's Ultimate Challenge is the very epitome of the beginner-level video game. Not necessarily the sort of thing that will appeal to the experienced gamer given the simplicity of the minigames included as well as the overall premise, but rather something you would have a younger child or a novice player fiddle around with for a bit before tackling the more complex titles of the medium. And for what it is, it's not a bad collection of minigames. They're competently designed, they work in the way they're supposed to, the presentation is somewhat decent looking, and in the right mindset, or perhaps on the hardest setting, whatever floats your boat, there's a bit of fun to be had with this one. If you want hardcore action, Mickey's Ultimate Challenge is not the game for you, obviously. But if you want a Mega Drive game that's lightweight and a semi-adequate introduction for newbies, then you could do much worse than this. At least this game has its moments, and that's worth something.